Ready? Good.
All right. Sound check. Chief Jason Umberger, DeLand PD. Okay. Good afternoon. I called this press conference to make a statement concerning the involvement of the DeLand Police Department in yesterday's May 12, 2020 incident where a Deltona man identified as Gregory Howe, white male, age 37, was fatally shot by Volusia County Sheriff's deputies. Let me say this from the outset, that contrary to what some media outlets reported last evening, based on information given to them by the Volusia County Sheriff, that no DeLand police officers were involved in any kind of pursuit, not a slow speed pursuit or any speed pursuit, which had been reported by some media last evening and this morning. In addition, none of our vehicles were actively following him after he fled the scene of the traffic stop that I will describe for you here today. At approximately 2:44 p.m. on May 12th, DeLand Motor Officer Mike Stacy was monitoring traffic in a stationary patrol at South Florida Avenue facing north at West Beersford Avenue. He observed a white male wearing a neon green shirt driving a white GMC truck bearing Florida registration Z619 drive past his location and observed that same driver was not wearing a seatbelt as is required by Florida state statute. Officer Stacy noted in his report that the front driver's side window was down, which gave him a clear and unobstructed view of the driver and the seatbelt violation. The Via continued west on West Beersford Avenue and then turned south on South Clara Avenue. Officer Stacy decided at this time to conduct a traffic stop of the vehicle for the seatbelt violation. Officer Stacy activated his lights at the intersection of West Beersford and South Clara Avenue as the truck turned onto South Clara Avenue. Officer Stacy noted in his report that he noticed the driver was reaching down toward the passenger side of the vehicle to something that he could not see. The vehicle stopped at West Carter Street and South Clara Avenue. Officer Stacy approached the driver and engaged in a conversation. He asked the driver what he had been reaching for and noted that he seemed nervous and would not respond to his questions. Officer Stacy was eventually able to obtain his driver's license, went back to his vehicle to conduct a records check of the driver, who was identified by his driver's license as Gregory Howe of Haversham Road, Deltona, date of birth 4/4/1983, age 37. The records check further revealed that Howe's driver's license was currently suspended. Officer Stacy decided to issue 2 citations to Howe. One for the seatbelt violation, the initial reason for his stop, and another, a misdemeanor criminal citation for driving on a suspended license. As he was writing these citations, he had called for another officer to provide him some backup, as Howe's movements had concerned him, and he wanted an officer there just to be observing him while he was writing. Officer Bice arrived on the scene. Officer Stacy completed the citations and approached the driver. Officer Bice was present, as I said, and observing the interaction. Officer Stacy explained to Howe that his driver's license was suspended and asked Howe if someone could drive his truck for him, at which time Howe looked directly forward and put his vehicle in drive. Officer Stacy told Howe, "Don't do it," at which time Howe ignored his command and drove off. He fled south through the parking lot where they had been stopped. He struck a log, which caused a tire and a hat to leave the bed of his truck, and then he fled out onto South Clara Avenue. Officer Stacy then got on the radio and transmitted that the vehicle had fled the traffic stop, confirming the charge of fleeing and eluding, and provided the truck's direction of travel. Officer Stacy also transmitted over the radio that the driver had been reaching for an unknown object during the stop and that he had also identified this driver. The time, as noted in the dispatch record of his transmission, was 3:01 p.m. This was the time that the car fled the traffic stop. Officer Stacy's intent initially, as I said, was to issue the driver citations and to release him. Then when Howe fled, he intended to add the charges of fleeing and eluding, failing to obey an order to stop, and file all these with the appropriate entities so that Mr. Howe would have to answer for his conduct. Neither he, nor Officer Bice, nor any DeLand police officer attempted to follow or pursue Howe, as this is the policy of the DeLand Police Department not to pursue vehicles for civil traffic violations or criminal misdemeanor citations. There are instances where we will pursue fleeing vehicles per our policy, but this is not one of them. The purpose of such a policy is that pursuits are dangerous and unpredictable and can create additional risk to the public. Unless certain circumstances or crimes have been committed, we do not pursue. The underlying offense for a traffic stop was a seatbelt violation. And then, of course, we learned an unlicensed driver, and then, of course, he fled the scene. None of these were qualifying offenses for us to engage in a pursuit. Officer Stacy applied our policy to his situation and did not pursue, which was a sound decision. In addition, he had the individual identified and was going to file charges on him anyway, as I had stated earlier. While Officer Stacy and Bice were collecting evidence at the scene of the traffic stop, Officer Stacy heard a radio transmission that VSO had located the vehicle about 2 minutes later. The time was about 3:03 p.m. now. Transmissions over the radio indicated that the Sheriff's Department had observed the vehicle at 15A and Taylor Road, and this began the Sheriff's Department's involvement in the incident, which led them to the front of the man's home in Deltona, where VSO deputies were involved in the shooting. For full transparency, we will be releasing all of our body-worn camera footage and our in-car camera footage to any media outlet who requests it. It should be noted that had these officers given pursuit, these facts would be noted in a police report, and they are not, because they did not give pursuit. And we would have in-car video footage of the pursuit, because our video is automatically activated when our emergency lights are activated. No such footage exists of any Deland police cars pursuing or following this vehicle, because we did not follow or pursue this vehicle after it fled the traffic stop. I will rightly defer all questions concerning what occurred after it fled our traffic stop at 3:01 p.m. when VSO units became involved with it at 15A and Taylor Road at 3:03 p.m. and all the events that transpired after that, which led up to the shooting in Deltona. I want to make a few additional comments concerning our traffic stop and the way our officers handled it. Officer Stacy and Officer Bice. Both officers conducted themselves in a professional manner and in accordance with all Deland Police Department policies and procedures. This traffic stop underscores the oftentimes unpredictable nature of police work. Officer Stacy conducted what seemed to be a routine traffic stop and was handling it accordingly, save for the furtive movements and somewhat suspicious movements and demeanor of Mr. Howe. Mr. Howe escalated the incident by fleeing, and Officer Stacy remained professional and followed our departmental policy. I am glad that both Officer Stacy and Officer Bice are okay, and I commend them for the job that they did yesterday. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Was the sheriff's office know exactly what the charges were? Once it left your town, did they know exactly that it was just a traffic stop? Basic. I mean, obviously they knew, right?
They knew what was transmitted over the radio, that a car fled a traffic stop. Most importantly, in my view, the question then should be asked, what were you chasing him for? What was he stopped for? That's a question that I want all of my supervisors to ask. And I'm not, disparaging the Volusia County Sheriff's Office in any way. But what I'm saying is it's important what the nature of the stop was. We did transmit, Officer Stacy transmitted that the vehicle had fled his traffic stop. He transmitted that he had the driver identified. And I believe that was the extent. And he also transmitted that the person had been reaching for some unknown object, so that I guess if any other law enforcement officers would have come in contact with him, and they did then, that they would at least be aware of that. Was he reaching for a gun? I'm not sure. I don't have any additional information. I haven't talked to Sheriff Chitwood, about what they found, in the car or at the house or anything of that nature. It may well be that he was, reaching for something. And I also will tell you that Officer Bice said something to me that was interesting. He said while he was engaging Mr. Howe, waiting for Officer Stacy to, finish these citations up, that Mr. Howe said, "Boy, you guys aren't talking like police officers." And we took that to mean like he was being treated courteously and professionally. So I wonder if our treatment of him in a professional manner may have caused him not to pull it. If there was a gun there, did he not pull that gun out and start engaging our officers at that time? I don't know. We will never know what was in his mind. Obviously, he was a troubled individual, and there were some issues with him. But I just thought it was interesting to note that he commented to Officer Bice, and you can listen to that and see that on the body worn camera footage and the in-car camera footage of the traffic stop.
To keep your issue here today, I mean, the sheriff certainly went out of his way to say that a DeLand police officer is lucky tonight because he thinks maybe he was reaching it up.
Go to bed.
But your issue today is more that you feel like when the sheriff said there was a pursuit, you were lumped into that pursuit.
Yeah, and you know, in fairness to the sheriff, you know, it's a rapidly evolving situation, right? There's lots going on. But yeah, I just wanted it to be clear we were not involved in that pursuit by any stretch of the imagination. We just weren't. We conducted the traffic stop, and when that individual fled our traffic stop, our involvement with that individual had ended, except Officer Stacy was going to file some paperwork, you know, and then the individual would have been brought before the court to answer for his charges.
And based on the underlying reason for the stop and the fact that he fled, you still would not have pursued based on even just fleeing.
No, we would not have.
Why is it that